Good morning now, and welcome back to the reading of God's Word. We are here now at the end of this week of the reading, we'll finish up here with Psalms 46 through 54 for these last 2 days of the reading here. And as stated before, we're not going to be able to go into each and every one of them about all the different verses and discuss them, but we will try our best to do the overall context of it and why it was written. So with that, we will begin here in Psalm 46 for this video, and which is basically a psalm of trust and thanksgiving. It's a psalm of praise. Remember, we talked about these psalms basically falling into two categories. One is the lamentation, and another one is praise and thanksgiving, really. And this is one of those praise hymns or praise songs. So we can read this basically in two parts as far as what's in it. In verses 1 through 3, you read through that and you get in your mind of no matter what, okay? It doesn't matter what's going on. And in verses 4 through 11, God is sovereign over all the creation, and nothing is going to escape him. It's an interesting little read. It is a confidence psalm. No matter what happens, God's in charge when you read that. And in Psalm 48 is a continuous, another praise psalm. It praises God for who he is and his protection from the enemies, from all the enemies of his people. He is these psalms at this point are not all that long, and they're very pointed. But this is a praise psalm, and it's basically praising him for protection, and that's what we all should be doing as well. We all need to be praying and thanking God for protecting us a lot of times from the evil that is in this world. And this is one of those psalms of thanksgiving. Psalm 49 changes a bit here now. This is a little bit different. We move to a psalm of wisdom, and it is written to instruct people on their lives and how to live. We kind of see a touch of Solomon in this, because when we get to Proverbs, that's what he writes about. It's wisdom, and he does contrast good and evil. So we kind of see this along its way. It's a psalm. Basically is a psalm of warnings and trusting warnings and against trusting in riches and wealth. In other words, don't trust in everything you can assemble in your lifetime. Basically, and notice this in verse 17. In verse 17 of this psalm, it says, when he dies, he will carry nothing away. So again, it is not trusting in your wealth, not trusting in anything but God, because all of these things that you're going to accumulate while you're here on earth, you're going to leave on earth. So you can't take it with you. So that moves us over out of 49 into 50. And we see a warning to Israel and an accusation of insincerity in their sacrifices. What we're looking at here is the sacrificing of the people and even the Levites at this time was not all that great. Their heart was not in it. And it is a warning of falling away from God and his covenant and not following the Mosaic law. So this is a time of not full apostasy here, but they were falling away, and he was giving warnings. And God doesn't do anything unless he gives a warning before he does it. So he gets into that and it is a warning against not following his laws. Verses 7 through 15, basically, we talked about this a little earlier. Verses 7 through 15, God's not overly concerned with the sacrifices. If you read through that, he says, I own everything, even the cattle on 1,000 hills. It's not the sacrifice that is important to God. What is? So we would ask you that question. What is important to God? And of course, the answer is obedience. He wants your love. He wants your obedience. He wants you paying attention to him. He wants you following his commands and his commandments. Sacrifices, we know in Hebrews, we go back to Hebrews, and the blood of bulls and rams could not save anybody. It could not atone for any sin. Only the blood of Christ could do that. So these sacrifices at the time of the Mosaic law was symbolic. It was not real. It was something that would teach us that there is going to be a cost for the sin. So we read through these things and we see this. It's a very powerful reading and a tremendous warning. If you go back to verses 16 through 23, this is a warning to all of the wicked people of the world. Reading through that, it should open your eyes there in Psalm 50. We get to Psalm 51. This is one of the famous Psalms. This is David's lamentation after his sin with Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah. And this psalm is probably somewhere way past a year or longer. After that, David did not really get into his mourning, I guess, or his reflection on the sins that he did. It was a year ago. A year had passed. In other words, that baby that Bathsheba had carried has already died. So you know that was 9 months right there. So it gets to this point. He's reflecting in this song. And this is a very, very personal lamentation of David talking to God. Please forgive me. I feel miserable. I am so bad. I can't. I don't know what to say. And so he just prays that God does not leave him or does not abandon him or punish him or destroy him for these sins. He's very powerful in this psalm. So I want you to leave this psalm after you read this. And this is one of those follow-on things that you can see how a lamentation such as 51 is in asking God for forgiveness, asking in confessing sin. But then after that, what happens? We should give God praise for that forgiveness, for listening to us, for being compassionate to us. Go back to Psalm 32. That would be a sequel psalm to this psalm. In other words, after this lamentation, David and his request, if you go back to 32, you'll see David thanking God so much. Blessed is he whose sin has been forgiven. So go back and read 32 right after you read 51, and you will see these two psalms would go hand in hand. Then we go to Psalm 52, and it is referred to as called a didactic psalm, which means intended to teach. This is another one of those psalms that it has a point to it, and it is about the wickedness and its doom. God is going to judge the wicked, and you can see the contrast of the wicked in verses 1 through 5, and the righteous verses 6 through 9. It's a very short Psalm 52 is very short. That's 9 verses, but there is a contrast there. Again, you can kind of see a little bit of Solomon in here because he does the same thing of transition. He does the comparison of the wicked and the righteous throughout all of his writings in the Proverbs. So that would be for 52. 53, Psalm 53 is almost identical to Psalm 14. If you went back to Psalm 14 and come to read this one, you'd read it all over again. And here's a lamentation over the foolishness and corruption of the human race of all things. I mean, he looks out and he says, look at these people. And he said, how foolish can they be? And corruption. Now, there's corruption everywhere. It's throughout all of the businesses and even in his day, but also corruption in his own government, in his kingdom. The corruption that was there is very evident. And if there was ever a psalm or ever a writing that here would be for that day, and it would be for our day. The corruption that we see in governments now, in the culture changes that are trying to be forced on us, and that issue there, the culture parts, transgender, wokeness, all of these things that are being forced, the foolishness that is in this thing, and people that are believing it. So with the corruption of government and the foolishness of culture change, we need to pray about this nation. And this again, David calls it out as he looks at the foolishness of just the human nature and where this is going. So we finish up now in Psalm 54 for this week, and David calls out to God for protection after the Zephites reveal his location to Saul. Again, this is one of those Psalms where David calls it a lamentation. It is, please protect me from all of the problems that is coming. And Saul will be out trying to kill me again. So he goes through that, and then again here we have a very, very short psalm. It's only 7 verses, and I'd say that this gives us, as far as prayer is concerned, sometimes we feel like we need to really get on our knees and get into some deep, long prayer, and that's a great thing, and yes, we should. But other than that, there are certain very small places. There's certain things that gives us opportunity and the need just for a short meditative prayer. God, please help me, and I'm about to face this or about to face that. Please help me with this. Please see to it, or please, someone is about to go into an operation in this next hour. I pray that your hand would be with them. It's very short prayer, but it is very meaningful. As long as that prayer is from the heart and that you know that this is a need that you're asking for. So not necessarily every prayer, just like every one of these Psalms, do not need to be all long and drawn out. So want to pay attention to that. So that takes us up through the readings in this, up through chapter 54, or Psalm 54 for this week. And you will continue again for several more weeks in the book of Psalms. So with that, and we will talk more about it. We got a lot more to say about the Psalms as we go through them. But for now, I pray that you will receive wisdom and understanding for the Psalms, and that God speaks to you through them. I do pray that you use your commentary book to go with this, and not just this video, and not just the straight reading, but look at the content of each and every one of these. And with that, may God bless the reading of his word.